Hello and welcome. I'm James Milan, and upon the completion of the second draft of Arlington's master plan, and in anticipation of the public hearing occurring on January 12th, Monday, January 12th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium at Town Hall, sponsored by the Arlington Redevelopment Board, I am here in the studio today with three of the architects of Arlington's town plan to get master plan, to get an update. We last spoke in December of 2013, at which point they were about a third of the way, they estimated, through the process, and have made much progress since then. So I am here today joined in the studio by Arlington's town planner, Carol Kowalski, and the two co-chairs of the Master Plan Advisory Committee, Charles Kolauskas and Carol Svensson. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to begin our conversation today by just reminding ourselves and our audience of why we're here. What is the master plan about? Where did the whole idea come from? And because our town planner, Carol Kowalski, is suffering from a cold and is here heroically, we're going to save her voice as much as we can, and I will ask you, Charlie, if you don't mind, to go ahead and give this brief summary of what the master plan is.
Yes, thank you for the invitation to be here today, and be happy to provide an update on where we stand with the master plan. The master plan is a document that really focuses on the land use and physical characteristics of the town. Many towns in Massachusetts have prepared master plans over the last few years. The state has a prescribed method for going through the master planning process and the contents of a master plan. And it focuses on a number of elements that have everything to do with the infrastructure, the roadway system, housing. As I said before, land use underlies all of that. The cultural resources and natural resources of the town, and the physical plant of the town, the public facilities, whether it's schools or town office facilities. We went through a process that collected a lot of data. We engaged a consultant, RKG Associates, who has prepared master plans for a number of communities in Massachusetts. They assembled a team of engineers, other planners, and urban designers to help us through that process. And during the past year and a half, we've learned a lot about the town's physical plan. Also, we've engaged a public participation process where we've gone out, had a series of meetings. All our meetings have been open to the public. They've been well attended. And we have really come to the point, after we analyzed all that data with the consultant, reviewed it, came up with a series of recommendations in terms of what the future might look like for Arlington. So that's what the master plan will contain. It will be presented in detail on at the public hearing on Monday evening.
Great, thanks very much. And let's talk about all that you have been up to since December 13th of 2013 and before, I'm sure. But you had anticipated at that time that there would be this series of public hearings, opportunity to get many comments from the public, as well as work with the consultants, et cetera, in a number of different areas. So if I could ask you, Carol Kowalski, to just give us a sense of how many meetings have you had, generally speaking? What are the kind of themes that are emerging or have emerged from public commentary? And just in general, let us know what you guys have been up to over these this last year or so.
We've had about 75, probably more than 75 opportunities to engage with the public. We've also done individual interviews and group interviews. Some of the themes that I think are important parts of the master plan's agenda are to address the town's fiscal stability by trying to leverage higher value mixed-use development. Mixed use is currently allowed in Arlington, and it's even encouraged in some of the zoning descriptions in our zoning bylaw, but it's hard to actually implement because of other requirements in our zoning bylaw. But that's kind of ironic because a lot of the great treasured buildings in our commercial districts are mixed use, where you'll see a combination of retail or other business with apartments or in some cases condominiums. Some of our even historic commercial buildings in our commercial districts have that mixed use form, but it's really hard now to do that, even though through the public process we heard people say they were interested in seeing that type of development when properties are redeveloped in Arlington. So that's an important theme. Mixed use is an important theme, and fiscal stability. Just to wrap up on this important theme, we have a very small commercial tax base. Almost the entire tax burden, all but a little over 4%, is on the residential taxpayer. And that's not very healthy. We lost some of our land zoned for business to residential development because the residential market here is so very strong. So we're trying to leverage that strong residential market to keep business land in business use by allowing mixed use, as long as the non-residential use is dominant.
Great. And Carol Svensson, I know that you also have some experience from, I think you were living in Michigan before you moved to Arlington, is that right?
That's right, James.
And
I was living in Michigan, where I was on the planning commission there at Midland, Michigan for 9 years. And during that time, we had worked on a master plan for that town and also doing a zoning ordinance, which I think is very important and something that we're going to look at. I'll give you a little sneak peek. One of the implementation ideas is to update and redo the zoning ordinance for the town of Arlington.
Yes, I expect that, and when we get around to talking about implementation a little bit later in the conversation, that your experience, the experience you've already had going through this process, which is new for all the rest of us, it may mean that we're turning to you for even more comments at that point. You had mentioned that one of the things that the public has clearly been of one voice about is an interest in mixed-use development in town. Charlie, are there other themes, again, other real priorities that you've gotten that sense of from the various public hearings that you've held?
Oh yes, we've gotten input from a number of the committees in town who have have gone to a number of the meetings and told us what they were really interested in a master plan. So for example, in open space, the preservation of open space in town is very important. Accessibility is very important to certain members of the community in terms of making sure that people who have disabilities are able to walk around town unimpeded. We have heard about transportation, making accommodation for bicycles as well with bicycle lanes. There have been a number of great ideas that have come forward. One of the things too that we're looking at is how the town will be evolving in the future and the use of technology or new ways of communicating and what impact that may have on the future of the town as well. So we're taking that all that into consideration.
Well, I do remember last time you were here that I was asking you to anticipate what some of the public concerns might be, and I think you were all a little prescient because several of those were mentioned even at that time, and I guess it has turned out that those have been kind of validated, those speculations that you had about what would be important to the Arlington populace. I'm wondering, Carol Kowalski, have there been surprises that have come through this process of surveying and speaking with members and hearing from members of the public? Have there been any surprises for you guys through that process? I
can't think of any really outlier surprises. I think, though, that the frequency at which the importance of walking and trees, that came up over and over again. There continued to be a lot of concern about the number of mature shade trees that were lost in several extreme weather incidents right before and during the start of the master plan. That is something that people really treasure about Arlington, that it's green and leafy. And people are very concerned about being able to replace and maintain the public tree canopy because it does provide benefits besides just a visual appeal, air quality benefits, water quality benefits. Also, walking came up very strongly over and over again, the ability to get around on foot in Arlington and the social benefits, the interactions, connections over and over again. People said they really value the ability to connect socially in Arlington and physically by whatever means you get around, whatever your mobility is. That came up a lot. So that's a strong theme in the plan and in the vision statement.
Okay, great. The result of all of these hearings and meetings, et cetera, and a prodigious amount of work, I think, on your guys' part, is a second draft of the master plan, as we mentioned, which runs to close to 200 pages and is a very impressive document. I'm just going to read some of the things that have been mentioned here as well, but the major issues, the major areas that you've looked at, and that's land use, traffic and circulation, housing and residential development, economic development more generally, the historical and cultural resources here, the natural resources or open space that you were just mentioning, and then the public facilities that, Charlie, you mentioned earlier. So we have this document now. It addresses all of these concerns. I assume that there's some balancing of priorities among all those competing concerns that is required. Is that something that is in the draft of the master plan now, your own recommendations for how to prioritize those things, or is that something that will be developed as implementation happens? And anybody who would like to jump in, please do.
Well, I could say we do have an implementation list. It's long, and it should be because there's a lot of interest in different things in there, and we're trying to sort of prioritize a little bit what we can do short-term, medium-term, and long-term to try to address what everyone has said that they want to see in the master plan. We also have the recommendations. The implementation comes directly from recommendations that have been developed by what we've heard from the people that have come out and participated in the master plan at all steps. So we feel that a lot of it has been well balanced and has included everything that we've heard to the degree that it could be. In other words, to balancing what we've heard overall to what there might have been some particular things that may be somewhere down the line.
Mm-hmm. So what are those priorities? You said that the priorities are reflected in your recommendations. What are they?
Well, one recommendation, as Carol mentioned, is to update and recodify the zoning bylaw. That's one of the, they're kind of graded into short-term, near-term, long-term, or ongoing. It's important for us to update our zoning bylaw to make sure that we are trying to achieve the dream that we hear the community wants. Our zoning bylaw was developed in the 70s. It was in response to some community concerns over large apartment towers that were going up. There was a moratorium, a building moratorium was adopted so that the community could develop an updated zoning bylaw at that time. To a great extent, what we ended up doing was codifying what was already built. So in some instances, you might see a single parcel zoning district next to a different zoning district and then a third zoning district just down the street. So it's a little hard to understand on the ground, or if you're a property owner, why you have different requirements than someone next door. The bylaw also predated Proposition 2.5. It also anticipated that we should become just strictly bedrooms, just strictly a bedroom community. So there were some aspects of the zoning bylaw that actually encouraged the conversion of business property to residential property. I don't think anyone foresaw that that would be unsustainable for us and not desirable. I don't think we want to be a homogeneous bedroom community necessarily at this point. For example, we hear that from the public process, there is an interest in having shared workspaces and being able to go to a place, instead of working from home, which a lot of Arlingtonians do, have the opportunity to go to a shared workspace in Arlington, not have to leave town to work. So we were trying to anticipate an opportunity to allow the community to consider updating the zoning after the master plan is adopted. The master plan does not change zoning in and of itself.
Okay. You had just mentioned that the implementation process you foresee happening in at least several different stages, a short term, a near term or medium term, a longer term, and you mentioned ongoing as well, which I assume means things that just are going to be continuing to develop throughout. Charlie, can you give us some idea of what are the time frames that you're thinking about when attached to those different terms?
As Carol mentioned, some of these implementation strategies can be done in the short term, but a lot of it may require Board of Selectmen action or town meeting action. And so that may take a while because you have to go through a process. One of the things I think that we want to spend some time on too is building a vibrant economy in 3 village centers, that being Arlington Heights, Arlington Center, and in East Arlington around Capitol Square. The reconstruction of Massachusetts Avenue in East Arlington, we feel is going to, which is now under construction, will spur a lot of economic development in the future, and also will achieve some of the goals in terms of how people move around in East Arlington. Those types of physical improvements will take a lot longer than some of the further studies that need to be done in the short term.
Okay, and then how the latest or the longest kinds of things that might take to come to fruition, what kind of time frame is the Arlington public, are Arlington citizens looking at for the implementation, assuming that things proceed as one might foresee?
Well, the master plan is usually made in the thought that this is at least a 10-year, more of a 20 or even 25-year plan. In a lot of communities, they look at it every 5 years to make sure that what they're doing is following the master plan, and if there's any changes because there's new information or there's something that happened that's maybe was not foreseen, that's in there. But it's a long-term plan, and we want to make sure that things are moving along. And there are some things like the zoning ordinance that we see as a priority, but there are things like changing some of these community centers that's not going to happen in those 5 or 10 years. It's going to happen over a longer time, and there will be constant change. And even when they are changed, I think they'll still hopefully be changed to address the changing needs of the people that live there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add something, James. The whole idea is to also make sure that change, when it comes, is more predictable. One of the motivating forces behind this plan was that there's been a lot of change in Arlington recently, and it always seems to kind of come out of nowhere. It's always a surprise. When change comes in the near future, assuming this plan is adopted, we all should have a general sense over time of what's expected where. We even have a recommendation about design guidelines so that there should be a reasonable expectation of even what might the form of the building take. I'm not talking about detailed things like shutters, but what type of massing and where will it be on the lot, so that there will be some expectation of what will come, not this just waking up one day and reading about it in the Advocate.
Right. As Carol Svensson, you mentioned, change is kind of built into the anticipation of what is going to be happening over the next 10, 15, 25 years. And I'm sure there are variables that you can try and foresee and others that you can't. One of the things we're wondering, though, is certainly money is going to be one of those variables that will affect implementation rate or what can be done, et cetera. I'm wondering, in making your recommendations, in formulating the second draft of the plan, are you taking financial considerations or financial burdens into account? Or is that, again, something that will just need to be dealt with as each step of the implementation happens?
Well, we're definitely taking financial considerations into account because that drives a lot of the things we want to do. And I think everyone's aware that we are having financial difficulties getting the money we want to do some of the things we want. And that's going to be a concern ongoing. And that's a question that's come up a lot during the meetings is where, to get that money, if you could choose this or that, and this maybe means more money to do it, where are we going to get the money or what are we going to do without to get that money? I know through our consultant, Arlington's actually quite well run and they really do a good job with the money they have. But on the other hand, there's a lot of things in the master plan that people would like to see, and that is going to take some money and some work. So that's definitely a consideration. And I don't think we address specifically where the money is going to come from because that's really, I think, something that's going to be left to the citizens to find out what they want to pay for the things they want to have.
Right, but it certainly sounds like the master plan is not just a wish list of everything that people would like to see happen. It's already being balanced to some degree with what is fiscally and in other ways viable.
Right, a little bit we wanted to dream. That's, I think, part of the plan, but there's in the recommendations and in the implementation schedule, there's the reality. And there's we want to get this done. We feel like it should be done maybe in the short term, but this is what it's going to take to get it done, either financially or maybe town meeting has to change something or a zoning ordinance change.
Mm-hmm. Charlie,
So
I'm sorry, I had cut you
Yes.
off. I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah.
I think that the master plan will go a long way in terms of obtaining grants from the state as well. The state looks favorably upon towns that have a master plan, that know the direction they're going in. And it will also help with federal grants too, I'm sure. So it's not just all town resources that we'll be using. We're hoping to leverage funds that the town has and to obtain federal and state money as well.
Okay, as we mentioned, there is a public hearing scheduled for Monday, January 12th. And after that, what are the next steps that happen before we can say the master plan is no longer in draft stage or in development, it is in place and we're moving forward on it? Carol?
The hearing is January 12th, as you said. Then the redevelopment board is the body under Mass General Law that can adopt a master plan. They will hear public comment on Monday. They will probably close the public comment portion of that hearing at the end of the night, Monday, then continue to deliberate at a future meeting, and then I'm hopeful they will vote to adopt the plan. It's then town policy. We've agreed in Arlington to take an additional step and to take it to town meeting for endorsement. That would occur at April, an annual town meeting. And that's because many of the steps in the implementation program require town meeting consideration, require town meeting action. So to have town meeting support for the plan direction itself is important for momentum for implementing the plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, we're just about wrapped up. I did want to give you guys an opportunity, though, if there's something that we haven't covered, haven't mentioned, something that you would definitely like to make sure is part of this conversation, here's your opportunity.
I have one, if you don't mind if I start.
No.
The Millbrook is a really important part of the plan. The Open Space Committee had a subcommittee a few years ago, way before this was started, before the master plan started, looking at the many reasons why we should be focusing more on the Millbrook. It's an opportunity for redevelopment. It's an opportunity to improve the natural resources value, public access and appreciation of the brook. We have some large underutilized sites on the brook that could see redevelopment in the next 10 or 20 years. The owners may decide they want to redevelop. It's critical then that subcommittee thought for us to study this and try to prepare for what would be the best possible scenario for realizing some of the goals in the plan. So the Millbrook is an important theme in the plan, and we hadn't talked about that, as well as there's a lot of interest in leveraging public art and our cultural energy in Arlington for economic development. Another thing that we didn't talk about is the north-south transportation connectors in Arlington, Lake Street, Park Ave, Mill Street, Jason Street. Did I leave any out?
Pleasant Street, Mystic
Pleasant
Street.
Street, thank you, and Mystic Street. There's a lot of congestion during rush hour. There's a lot of interest in trying to address the congestion on the north-south routes, as well as improve access to transit. So those are some issues, and there's some recommendations in the plan about those as well.
Thanks.
And I'd like to thank the Master Plan Advisory Committee. We have 11 members, all very talented individuals with different backgrounds, different areas of interest, and they've been great contributors to the whole process. Carol and I are just representing the rest of the team, as well as the town staff. They've been very supportive whenever we have asked for information. They've gotten it to us. We've worked as a team, and I think the product reflects that. All aspects, different backgrounds, different interests, different disciplines. So it truly is a collaborative effort.
Carol, did you want to add anything?
Yes, one thing I found throughout the whole process is the people of the town of Arlington really like the town they live in. One theme that came through everything was that we want the culture of Arlington, I'm not sure how they describe it, the way Arlington is. We want to continue that. We don't want to really change things. We want that feel of Arlington, and that was something we struggled to try to capture, and I think we did a pretty good job in their master plan, that people really do want to live here, and they do like their community, and there's ways to make it better, but they really do like Arlington, and the town of Arlington is a good place to live.
Hear, hear. And on that note, I do want to add my own thanks and our thanks to the three of you for coming in today to give us an update on where we are with the master plan in anticipation of these final stages. And also for the work that you've put in. Many hours, I'm sure, that we are not aware of as a populace, but that all of us will benefit from. So Charlie Klauskas and Carol Svensson, co-chairs of the committee. Carol Kowalski, thank you for being here and for the work that you've done. And with one more reminder that there is a public hearing scheduled for Monday, January 12th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium in Town Hall, sponsored by the Arlington Redevelopment Board. Please attend if you can and if you have an interest, and make your own voice heard in that forum. Thanking our guests once more. For Arlington Public News, I'm James Milan. Thanks for joining us.